Hello everyone, here we are on Thursday the 6th of August and I'm just about to complete this first column of this month, which means actually effectively it means 20% of the month gone already. Crazy, isn't it? What I thought I'd do today is, just before I start doing anything, is just talk a little bit about how I would go about choosing a colour for a day, because you know, most of this is intuitive, it's intuitively stitched, but in terms of making it look fairly harmonious as a complete thing, I do sometimes spend some time thinking quite carefully about what colour I want to put in a space, particularly when it's got three neighbours like this one. So you can see I've got blue in this is yesterday, I've got blue in yesterday's block. I've got sort of reds and yellows in, this must have been sometime in July, early July, and I've got blues and greens in this one. So I don't want blues, I don't want greens, and don't want reds, because I don't want to repeat the same colour again. So not blue, not red, not green. I'm thinking purple. So I've got my box of purples here, and I'm just going to try some. I think I quite like that, but I think it's a bit dark and it's probably a bit wintry. It's got a lot of brown in it. So I'm looking for something that still says sort of late summer, early autumn. I'm thinking maybe that might do. That's a very similar colour to the colour I've used for the grid line there. So, and I quite like that next to all of those colours actually. So that was, by sheer good luck, I think I've picked the colour I'm going to use. If I pick out a few others, you can just see the effect of how the colours sit together. And I think that is less effective than that. Just because I think there's a bit more contrast in this one. This one is a bit similar in tone to this one. So you know, I've got kind of one eye on how it's going to look overall, and I've just pulled out this fine silk as well, which I quite like. I quite like that one as well, actually. I don't know if that's a bit too similar to that. What I might do is do most of it in that and use that as a little accent colour. So let's see how that goes. So I'm just going to thread my needle and then we'll start doing something. Okay, so I've just brought this thread up somewhere down this bottom corner, and I'm thinking what I might do today is something kind of going that way, because I've got two horizontal, and I'm thinking about balancing the patterns as well, not just the colours, also the patterns. So I've got horizontal lines there and there, and I've got kind of curving lines here and diagonal lines there. So I'm kind of thinking about something that's going to sit nicely in there, and I'm thinking something that I don't know, let's see, because my other option here was to do vertical lines, which might also have worked, but I'm just going to do some straight stitches in this first lilac thread, and it's a silk pearl 12, so 1 or 2 strands of DMC would be probably similar. I don't know, because I don't use DMC very often, but again, it depends on the effect you want. You know, if you want bigger, thicker stitches, then use more strands. If you want finer stitches, then use fewer strands. So I'm just fairly randomly making a line out of this straight stitch. I've had to shut my windows this morning because there's a terrible noise outside. I think it might be somebody cutting a tree down, which is a great shame. We only have a very small garden, but our garden backs onto some very big gardens. There are bigger houses all around us, and they've got very, very big gardens. So our garden kind of backs onto those. And a lot of the bigger gardens have got quite large trees in them. And the owners fairly regularly have them cut down. There'll be no trees left at this rate. Kind of understand it, you know, a big tree is going to take up a lot of space. And when I say a big garden, I mean, you know, relatively. Bigger than ours is what I mean. Right, so that's what happened there, just while I wasn't thinking about it. And I'm probably going to carry on and do that again. So I'm just going to turn this round and keep going. Okay, so I'm going to leave a little space, I think, in between, so that I can do something with that other thread. So at the moment I'm just going to echo that. And then we'll have a look at what we might do next. Just enough, look at that. Just enough thread to get to the bottom of there. How lucky was that? Okay, I'm just going to fasten that off and then we'll have a look at it. Okay, here we are. I've just threaded a needle with this second thread. It's a fine silk, so it's a little bit, well, it's half the thickness of the Pearl 12. So, let's just have a look at it, because I'm going to ask you my usual question, which is, what would you do now? So if that's how far you've got, what would you do next? There's all kinds of things you could do. You could do another row here of something. You could do something over the top of this, going the different way, you know, more straight stitches going over the top of it. You could do a circle over the top of it. You've got lots and lots and lots of options. You could thread something through these. You know, thread a thicker thread underneath those stitches. There are lots and lots of things you could do. So you tell me, what would you do? I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to do, I think, if I can get at it, let me put it where you can see it. I'm going to do probably a little blanket stitch down the side here. And I'm probably doing this the wrong way around. I don't know, am I? Try to arrange these things so my hand isn't in the way all the time. This doesn't feel natural. It would be more natural for me to start that way and go left to right rather than right to left, but my hand is probably in the way this way around. So I'm just going to do this blanket stitch here, and then rather predictably I'm going to do the same over there, and this time I'm going to start down there. I'm going to turn it around and start down there so it's a bit more natural. So I'm just going to fasten that off. And I'll start my thread again at the other edge. so we're back. We're on the, I've just turned it round just so I can get it easier. That feels a bit more natural. So I'm just doing blanket stitch again. Beside this wavy row of straight stitches. For no reason, really. You know, these daily blocks don't necessarily mean anything. They don't, you know, I don't do a particular stitch because of any reason. Just, it's all fairly random. Just to stitch down a few moments of every day as time passes. So let's just take that down into there, and then we'll have another look at it. And I'm thinking it needs something a little bit darker. So I've chosen this. Is this the thing I said was too wintry? Did I pick this out in the first place and said it was too wintry? I think it isn't. I can't remember now. But it's, I mean, it's quite, it's sort of fairly dark. It's sort of purples, pinks, and very dark brownish purples. And it's actually a very fine wool. It's a bit like crewel wool. If you've ever done crewel embroidery, that's C-R-E-W-E-L, not C-R-U-E-L. And I'm just going to do a couple of running stitches in this corner. Just put that down there. I've had to switch to a different needle, so I'm now using an embroidery needle because just because of the shape of this wool, it just goes through the overlay of an embroidery needle much easier. I'm going to bring that up here, and I'm going to do what I said you could do, which is thread this stitch. I'm just going to do a tiny little back stitch there just to anchor that, because I've done quite a long float on the back. So I'm going to use the eye end of the needle, and I'm just going to come up through these stitches, under the stitches on top of the cloth, and just sort of ease it into the pattern. And then I'm going to do a tiny back stitch there just to anchor that, and then I'm going to do some running stitch down the middle of this channel, let me just turn it round so that I can do that more smoothly. Okay, so I'm just going to do this running stitch just down the middle here, and then you can guess what's coming next. I'm going to do exactly the same on this side. I'm going to thread that one and fill this corner with a running stitch as well, and I think by that point I think we might be done. Oops, going from one extreme to the other there, aren't I? I'm normally doing it right down here where you can't see it, and now I'm doing it up there where you can't see it. I mean, it's quite a small window to keep it in. So I think that slightly darker line is helping. What do you think? Right, so I'm just going to thread this row of stitches as well. Just go under as many as you comfortably can with your needle, and then just find where you were and keep going. And not pulling too tightly, because I want the threading thread to follow the curve like that. So I'm just going to take that down to there. I'm going to do a little tiny little back stitch there so I can bring it up over here. And another tiny back stitch there. And then I'm just going to fill that corner in with some running stitch. And then I reckon we'll be done. The picture might have moved a little bit because I accidentally knocked the camera with my hand. So I've just had to reposition it. It won't matter, I don't think. Right, it's the last few stitches going in there, and I think I'm going to call that done and just fasten that off. And there it is. So I'm going to call that done. And I quite like the way these lines are kind of similar but different to these lines. And I think when I come to do tomorrow's, which I think will be here, it's got to be, hasn't it? Got to be there. I may do something with a more kind of solid pattern rather than something, because these kind of look stripy from a distance. So I may try and do something with something a bit more solid, or maybe something a bit less linear. But you know, that's tomorrow. I'll think about that when I have to. So for today, we've ended up with wavy lines, which is fine. And whatever you're stitching today, enjoy a few moments of quiet, peaceful stitching, and I will see you probably next week sometime. Thanks so much for watching. Bye for now.